Well, thanks very much for coming to this lecture. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about a couple of things. One is this phrase we're using, doing international politics. I just want to be able to explain this phrase, what's the importance of it in the context of international relations. And then I want to give an example of how it works with a particular case. And I'm going to call that where have you been, you and your data double. This is about the kinds of data that's been collected from us through social media and so on, and what happens with that data. You're familiar with the major issues that's surrounding it, but I'll give you as an example of doing international politics. Now, what do I mean by doing international politics? Why are we using that phrase? What does it indicate? Now, we use this phrase particularly in University of London Institute in Paris teaching in ULIP, but also here at this school here in Milan with a couple of colleagues, number of colleagues actually, setting up a global politics program. We also use this doing international political sociology or doing international politics. It means really two things. One, in terms of our teaching, we are shifting slightly the focus on learning about doers of international politics. It's an actor-oriented approach. What we mean by that is the following. If you were to follow just simply the media reports right now, you would be forgiven to think that major actors of international politics are states and leaders who run these states. All we hear about Boris Johnson, Theresa May, Trump, Putin, Macron, Merkel, these are the names that we hear. They are doing international politics. They make the decisions about missiles. They make the decisions about whether to invade or not invade. It's a relationship between nations, international, and these relations are performed by leaders. But international politics is more complex than that. There are many other actors in international politics. States are not the only ones, and leaders are not the only ones either. It's much more complex terrain, and using international relations to only indicate what leaders do misses a significant part of international politics. So that's what we do in our teaching, broadening the number of actors, and I will give a couple of examples quickly. But the second meaning is this doing, is that also there are ways of teaching students about doing international politics. One of the ways in which is to invite them to think themselves as actors of international politics. Now, you wouldn't think that you are an actor of international politics if you believe that it is Putin versus Trump versus May versus Macron is kind of field. Obviously, you're not an international politics actor. But if you switch it to this broadened vision of international politics, you are actually doing international politics. So that's the other point. So what does it mean now to conceive ourselves as actors of international politics? So those are the things that we try to do. Here, just to shock you for a second, is that this man is doing international politics. Now, with our current vision, of course, what is he doing? I don't know if you're familiar with the image, but this is a Chinese dissident artist, Ai Weiwei, who does performance installation for art, but recently he's become political, particularly about refugees. And this was really when he was announcing his becoming political about refugee questions. He used to live in China. He became a dissident. He moved to Berlin. He is now in exile. But basically, his politics was about oppression in China. So he was just protesting with his art against Chinese authoritarian government. But then he announced with this one particular act that he was turning his attention to refugee politics. And this is exactly the same position that one refugee boy was found dead on this very beach, Alan Kurdi, when his family was trying to escape Syria and arrive in the shores of Greece, but their boat capsized off the shore of Turkey, and he was found dead on this beach. Now, people thought that, well, this is bad taste. He's not doing international politics. He's actually exploiting the life of a young boy. The others begged to differ. They said, no, when an internationally known actor, artist, actually does this daring act, it actually gets attention of people. They just look at it in a different way. You'll be the judge. I'm not sure where I would stand about this, but drowning as or posing as a drowned Syrian infant refugee in a haunting photo, obviously, from my point of view, whether you like it or not, he is doing international politics. We have many examples of this. The other example, of course, is the Edward Snowden, when he decides as a CIA operative, the information that he's sitting on is just something that international public should know. He could not live with the fact that NSA files and surveillance revelations, he couldn't sit on that data in all his conscience. He had to leak that information. And as a result of course, his act, we know a lot more than we used to know about not only private corporations, but also government spying on what we do. And so without him, internet privacy and security probably would not have been as prominent as it has become more recently. And as a result, there have been legal changes. Now, this is exactly also the point I want to make. Remember, I said doing international politics, I want to illustrate with an example. I want to illustrate with an example where, okay, Edward Snowden is an actor. Obviously, he was a CIA operative who had access to that kind of data. Who are you to have access to data to become international politics? You have nothing. So you think. This is the point that I want to make. Actually, we each individually have been volunteering loads of data to both corporations and governments that makes us an actor of international politics. So it is not just a question of even a private decision, whether you should say yes to a terms of agreement when you're agreeing on a website, or whether you should just simply sign an agreement that you're going to reveal or you're going to share your data with a corporation. When you're doing these things now, you're not doing something private. It has public consequences. And that's what I wanted to demonstrate.